Anishinabe dok need so wajik bine do dem chiging don jwa. Chinandam dash minwa gibijaya mampi Shingwauk Kinoomaage Gamig. Myself, I'm honored to be here again today at this institution, and I like what I see. Lots of brown faces. Meanwhile, dash as Anishinabe people up to go nipnage go gi minuguna. We've been given a lot of things, us Anishinabe people. And so it doesn't just take one person to know it and understand it. So we all got to collectively put in something to further our understanding. So that's why we have gatherings like this. And then this morning we had a circle with the fire. We have all this stuff that we've been given to keep ourselves warm, keep ourselves nourished, feed our spirit, our body, and our minds. So this morning we had a sunrise with Shiken. So our lawyer lit the fire this morning. So we had all these people that brought out their pipes too, and it's good to see Dogamamananik, that all our chiefs bring these pipes up, and their feathers, their bundles, and they all come to smoke together. And that's our old, what our word was for a council. Zagaswaya dawak. Zagaswaya dawak kundak gimak. Zagaswaya dawak kundak Anishinabe. Our people give each other a smoke. And they don't just mean that they're giving it to each other as chiefs. It means also our ancestors, meanwhile Wabi Yajik, meanwhile Ganama Yajik. The ones that left, and the ones that are yet to come. That's who we're smoking for. And that's why we turned that pipe all around in a circle. We offered the east, south, west, north, Mother Earth, and the sky. So we offer this pipe, we turn this pipe all around and invite everyone to come and smoke. And then we also try to remember, use that whenever we take these smudge, clear our mind, clear our eyes, clear our ears, and also our nose, and our mouth, and our thoughts. We breathe that in, that smudge, that smoke. We close our eyes and open them again so that we try to understand, see things new. So, same thing with our ears. Put that over our ears, and we put that over our heart. So, some of us washed up this morning. But we say, you get up in the morning, you wash your face, you wash your hair, wash your hands. But sometimes some of us didn't wash our spirit this morning. And that's what we use that smudge for. So we get up each morning, wash our hands. Before we sneak, you wash your hands. Same thing with us. We do that with that smudge. We wash ourselves with that smoke. That's how we would say we cleanse ourselves. But the way they used to say that with us, we call this migas, these wampum shells. And they used to tell us that we're going to take this wampum. And they said, whenever we met together, this is what the Niagara used to say to us, and these were the Huron as well as the Six Nations. But then we adopted it as well as Anishinabe people. They said, I take this wampum and I dry your tears. Maybe you lost somebody in the last year since the last time we met. So of course, when we look at wampum, we see that it actually has no ability to absorb our tears. It's not a cloth, it's not a sponge. But that's what our ancestors used to say. I take this wampum, this migas, and I dry your tears. And then they would say with that feather, I take that white feather, and I wipe the dust from your eyes. And I wipe the dust from your throat so that you may be able to talk. And I wipe that, I tickle, they would say, I tickle your ears so that you may be able to listen to what I have to say. So that's what they would say with these feathers and this wampum belt and these wampum strings. And in our language, we don't call it wampum, we call it migas. So there's different kinds of migas. We call this one, some of you will see this one, cowrie shell, migas, we call that one. And then this one as well, with that purple inside, that's what we call megas as well. But you see, if you look at it this way, and you dive, Anishinabe Igogi, when they dive, they go down to get a clam. This isn't a clam though. And in our language we say for a clam, S. S is a clam. S is a little clam. But that's not the same word that we use. So it's a different one that we're talking about when we say Esis, or somebody now that Anishinabe, Anishinabe knows when the Esis, Yahweh Mio don't Anishinabe. Some of the Anishinabe, they still carry that, that name, little clam. But it's not this migas that we call. And when I first started doing this research, when I started to do this research, a lot of people used to say to me, oh, we're Anishinabe, we're not Mohawks. We never used this wampum. This wampum belt isn't ours. We never used that. But then as I did more research in Giba, Kenjigayan, I went to all over different places, Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, and I looked at different archives. And in all these different archives, I read the different speeches that we had. And then there's an Odawa chief named Okeda. And this Okeda, now these people are called Kedas in Shishigwani. And this Okeda says he got up and he spoke on these wampum belts here. And then the same thing we had in Shiging, Devaske ancestor, his name was Oga Pickrell of the Caribou clan. And he would go to Michilimackinac and he would speak on strings of wampum. They said Oga came to the garrison today and he spoke on 3 strings of wampum. And he spoke on behalf of himself, but also for the band of Misko Benesse of La Plage. So we use this wampum ourselves as Anishinaabe people, even though that's one of the things that we started to lose, our understanding of, but now it's starting to come back. But I started researching this in around 2002, and that was the 140th anniversary of the signing of the 1862 Manitoulin Treaty. And it was that's what spurred my interest, was that one of the chiefs, Bejago Naniwe, Mamjidawat, Nishnabek meanwhile Jaganashak. When they had a council, the Nishnabek and the Jaganashak, the treaty commissioners, they came to Manitowoc, and one of the chiefs had gotten up, and it was Jaco Talgevanin. This guy is the one who got up and he says, you spoke of a perfectly beautiful white bird when we first met. And now I fixed my gaze onto this white bird. And as I was reading that, I didn't know what he was talking about either. But you can imagine what that Jaganash was thinking. What the hell is this Indian talking about? A white bird. I'm here to get his land, not feathers. But this is all, what he's referencing is that 1764 Treaty Wampum Belt. And so I'll try and explain what this belt means and what all these metaphors mean. Because in our understanding, our treaties don't start with no ye by all these presents. It doesn't begin like that. With us, we say, ours say, Gyabaniga Kendan, Gajagano Nadwaba, Nigatsima, Api, Jiwakajiu Nadwaba, Hui Migazi. I still know how you talk to our ancestors when you bid them to go to war. Nui Kanashkawa, Mabe Medabi, Kikachikami Mawa. I will chase away anybody who comes to your great lake. Your children will own that land. You told us this at Niagara, that your children will own this land. Meanwhile, Nandawabat Nangadabanuji Mobimat when Wanjamok said pieces. In the Nabian Gautagiji. Nandawaban Nangabanoji Bimatsit, where they went to said pieces. He said, as you look about all around the heaven, the Nabian Gautagiji, Nandawaban done, look for it. Kedabanoji Mobimatsit, where they went to said pieces. Where the sun rises, look for the life of your children, where the sun rises. Kowab Magis is Jimasquap Pagwajing. You will see a sunrise red. The Bishko Eje Misko and it is the same as my color, the color that I wear. So that's one of the things that we think of when we think of these promises that were made and the agreements that were made between us and the Jaganashak, who we call the Jaganashak. That's specifically the British. Wempegoji, that's specifically the French. Annuities, that's specifically the Germans. But for us, our agreements were with this British officer and the British crown. Chigama, they call him, and Chigama, the queen. But they said that to us, look for that where the sun rises, and they adopted that as their symbol of their nation as well. And then when they said they adopted us too, they said, we adopt you as our children, and we will call you Nijans, and Nijansade. I call you my children, and you will call me my father, our father. So I used to think that this was, when I hear about this, our great white father, I used to think it was Bo. But then I found letters written in Ojibwe, and that's how they addressed it. Gitchin no Sana, our great father. But they didn't say Gitchin Wapshke no Sana, they just said Gitchin no Sana, our father, not our white father. And then when we think of Anishinabe people, how we understand the world, and we see that sunrise red, and we say that same thing for us. We call that one grandfather sun, and we call this one Mother Earth, and we call that moon Kok Misna, our grandmother. All of our grandmother, all of our mother, all of our father. And then that's what they said, the British took that symbol of the sun as their emblem towards us as well. And then that's what they said, and as that sun gets a bit higher, it'll be shining brilliantly all over. Meanwhile, they said, they said, as that sun gets even higher, all these flowers will start to bloom. And then this is the promise that they made to us. That's the image of the life of your children. When you accept this belt, he said, when you take this wampum belt, you are going to be having a sunshiny day. The sun is always going to shine, and all these flowers are going to bloom. And that's what they said, the same thing. Whenever they would petition the representative of the crown, they said, that sun that shines on us, it shines on us indiscriminately. Each and every one of us are able to accept its rays and accept its warmth. That's what they said. And that's how the British are supposed to treat us, indiscriminately, and share with everybody how we are. But so the same thing, when we got up this morning and they gave tobacco to that fire, and they smoked that tobacco in their pipes. And then also, when they spoke, one Anishinaabe Kwe spoke for the water, and then she also spoke for those berries. And then she gave it to that fire, offered it to that fire, as well as these staffs. So it's the same thing. We offer these things first, give it to them, our ancestors, not only our ancestors, but Godo Demanani, our clans, our helpers, to help us through this. And then the same thing, the British, they understood this, because they would give us presents, and every time they came to gather us together, they actually gave us tobacco. Every year they gave us tobacco. They knew how important that was to us, as what we believed that was the first plant that the Creator put here on earth, for us to be able to communicate with the Creator, our ancestors, and all these spirits. Nidok, Gyutai, all these spirits, Yawok, in every direction that all these spirits are that we summon to assist us at different times. So that's what they promised us, they said, and that's the thing that we should say, I still see that sun, and it crosses the sky. Meanwhile, and I still see that river, and it's still flowing. Meanwhile, sun. and that grass still grows. So I used to think when I would see this when I was in university, I'd see that as long as the rivers flow, the grass grows and the sun crosses the sky. I always associated that with treaties out west in the prairies, that's what they said. But actually that's the transcripts from our treaty, this Treaty of Niagara. And that was the words that Shingwauk, mi we gakada Shingwauk 1852 ode nidawani. At Manitwani in 1852, one day announced that they would no longer give us the presents, and they were breaking this treaty, this covenant chain treaty with us. That's what Shingwauk had said. How can this be? I still see the sun crossing the sky. How can this be? I still see the rivers flowing and the grass growing. Your first men were the ones who told us that as long as these things happen, these presents would last. And so we say to you, and they were addressing the Superintendent of Indian Affairs there, we tell you to reinstill this and keep this going, because this is our first treaty with you, and this is what we now call our foundational treaty. But they always point to the Royal Proclamation as the foundational treaty, but it actually isn't. That's a proclamation. That's what King George had said and announced to his people. He told them, this is how you're going to deal with them as my subjects. And then they had to bring that belt to us, and then they had to ask us, will you take our hand? And that's when we said, yes, we'll take your hand, and we'll share with you what you have to share with us. And there are conditions on this of us sharing, and the prime condition is you come to our country and you give us something first. And that's what these presents mean, what we call Anishinabe, the Anishinabe presents that they gave us. So there's a lot of different things. We look at that wampum belt, and sometimes people say it means friendship. And in certain regards, I feel that diminishes that treaty when they call it a peace and friendship treaty. Because in that belt actually is our Aboriginal title, our Aboriginal right to hunt and fish, as well as what we now call our fiduciary responsibility, as well as our nation-to-nation relationship. So when I said it refers to this Aboriginal title, this is the speeches that the chiefs had said throughout, from 1764 up to 1881. They always said, you had said our children will own this land. And you said, and we agreed to that. That's what we call Aboriginal title. You recognized Aboriginal title with this wampum belt. Then the next thing that they had said, they said, Sir William Johnson says, "Gonna win ma beneshu. Wapshkizit mean wa bin de ezit. Wapchgo shigen dogazit wapshke benesit. I'm going to keep a perfectly beautiful white bird at my house," he said. Meanwhile, and I give you one for you to keep up at your country. You're going to have a perfectly beautiful white bird as well. That's what they told us at that time. And he says, "Nishke ni Johnson, ndoshton kodana." I make here a mountain, and I make it high. And on that high mountain, this is where I place that white bird. And I make one at my house too, and I put that bird on that high mountain. Meanwhile, and that road that I make from that mountain to my country, I make a high road. And now that's how we say that is our nation-to-nation relationship. That perfectly beautiful white bird, that's supposed to be the Minister of Indian Affairs, who I would interpret as being Minister of Indian Affairs. And on our end, that perfectly beautiful white bird that we have, that's the Odawa chief, who is the one who's to be the keeper of this belt on behalf of the 12 Western nations that entered into this agreement. So that's what they said. If ever you need to say anything to me, you will address your concerns to your white bird. And if I have anything to say to you, I will address them to my white bird. And then these birds are going to meet. And you'll always hear people talk about that. In the speeches, they'll say, I haven't listened. I haven't listened to bad birds. That's what they say. And that's what they told us at that time. don't listen to bad birds, meaning like gossip. Only listen to those that we have designated as our channels of communication so that there isn't anything wrong. And now you see all these, our chiefs here, all of our chiefs that are sitting here, and then they always talk about that. We don't want to deal with the province. We don't want to deal with the mayor. We want to deal with the Governor General, the representative of the Crown. And that's why this is still persisting today. It's because it's been ingrained, and that actually was set out in 1764 with that Treaty of Niagara Wampum Bill, that they said we're going to put a white bird and here another white bird. But they actually didn't write it down. We herefore set down that there's going to be a Minister of Indian Affairs, and we herefore set forward that there's going to be a representative on your end as well. They talked about it in a metaphorical sense and in an allegorical sense, and that's how the Anishinaabe conducted their diplomacy. They would talk about these, and that's what we got to study. That's what we got to study so that we understand what they're talking about. And the further that we understand this, maybe we'll understand a bit. Bangigo at Ndo Nistotana, we understand a bit, little bit, bit by bit. But when we do, we're doing so in English first. Then our challenge as a nation is that we understand it in our language. And that's when we say we fully understand this. Moshkindash with P. Well, we will understand this fully when we understand it all in our language as our ancestors have put this down and as they have passed it on. So that's the one. Fiduciary responsibility, they said as well too, when they said, I'm going to chase away anybody who comes to your great lake and bothers you, tries to rip you off, tries to steal your land, your furs, anything. I will chase them away. That's what they promised us. So again, that's what now we call fiduciary responsibility. And that's in that belt. When our ancestors, our chiefs, our speakers would get up and talk and recite these belts, that's what they talked about. Fiduciary responsibility, that's those two white birds, as well as proper channels of communication, taking the high road on those mountains, those two high roads. Of course, there is no mountain up here. And there is no actual physical road running from Michilimackinac down to Johnstown, south of Lake Ontario, where William Johnson had lived. They spoke of this in a metaphorical sense. And they would take these strings and they would say, I take this string, and tomorrow morning I expect to see the other end at your house. I run this string from my house to your house, from my country to your country. That's what they would say. And of course, this string isn't going to go from Michilimackinac all the way down to Johnstown in south of Lake Ontario, where William Johnson lived. So we always talked about these things in a metaphorical sense, allegorical sense, as well as understanding from our point of view. And that's the other thing that I want to stress, is that this belt that we were given this belt. We didn't make this belt. Sometimes this Jagnash phoned me up and asked me, can I see that belt? I'm a non-native. I wonder if I could see it. And can I look at it? And I said, your ancestors gave it to us. And I wish you would understand it. And then maybe if you understood it, what your ancestors had said they would do, that you do. And you do that for us based on this belt, things would be a lot better for us as well. So the Jaganash are the ones that actually got these wampum at the bottom of the ocean, picked them, manufactured them into beads, and then they designed the symbols that are on there, because they studied our way of understanding things. But now it's only the paper that they look to. And they call that paper, that wampum belt, they say it's not a treaty. They say that's not a treaty. If it were a treaty, where's the paper? If that were a treaty, where's the clauses in the treaty? If that were a treaty, where's the Dodem's signatures on the paper? Where's the wax seals and the ribbon that's affixed to that? And of course there's none. And we say, because this is a living treaty. Because since 1764, you came up to Michilimackinac. And when you came up to Michilimackinac, when your ship came into Michilimackinac, your men came out and they brought us tobacco, and they started a fire, and they brought food, and they fed us, and then they brought out blankets, and they brought out cloth, and they brought out ribbons, and they brought out net thread, they brought out cod lines, mackerel lines, and they brought out Russia and Scotch sheeting for our sails on our canoes and for the covering of our wigwams. And then they also gave us ball, shot, and gunpowder. So when you look at that belt, every year that they're giving us this from 1764 up to 1854, they're giving us net thread. They're giving us sails for our boats. They're giving us cod lines, mackerel lines, fish hooks, and they even give us spearheads. And then they're also giving us guns, ammunition, and then that's why this belt also represents our Aboriginal right to hunt and fish, because they're providing that to us. They're saying, you go do this. We still recognize that you're the one who said that you need this from us, and this is, I give you this ammunition, and I give you this net thread. And then what happens after, of course, they stop giving us these presents in 1854, then they pass Indian Act in 1867, and in 1876, they pass the Fish and Game Act. And then that's when they start throwing, confiscating our catch, confiscating our nets, telling us we're fishing out of the season, and then they tell us we can't sell that fish, and they tell us we can't sell that moose meat, and they tell us we can't sell that maple sugar. But all this while, before then, that's what they were expecting from us, and they were accepting that from us. So that's what this belt means. This belt doesn't just mean that we're holding hands and everything's going to be hunky-dory. The belt actually means our Aboriginal title to the land. The belt actually means that they have a fiduciary responsibility to us, and that there are proper channels that we are to communicate, and then also that they recognize our Aboriginal right to hunt and fish, and it also represents that they're going to take care of us. They're supposed to protect us from themselves. That's what this belt means. They're supposed to protect us from themselves. And of course, that's a really hard job. If any of you really think of that, that's a hard job. They're supposed to protect them from themselves. They're supposed to protect us from themselves. So that's a hard job. When we look at this again, we talk about this. I don't know if this Marshall McLuhan, who we call Marshall McLuhan, a well-known scholar, and he coined the phrase, the medium is the message. And then when we look at this, I don't know if this Marshall McLuhan was looking at the Anishinaabe people, but when we look at wampum, and we look at feathers, and we look at pipes, we look at tobaccos, and we look at eagle staves, and we see what these guys, they incorporated our symbols. They incorporated our means of communicating and encoding our information and encoding their promises to us. So they used this wampum that they took from the bottom of the ocean. And with Anishinaabe people, we say there are 4 layers below the earth, and there's 4 layers above the sky. And we say that it's that eagle that flies the highest. And we say that eagle every morning. This one, he actually flies all around this eagle, and he sees if any Anishinaabe are burning their tobacco and offering up their prayers. And one day he sees that they're praying, he takes those prayers up to the Creator. So when we see, if any of us ever had this medal, but there was 24 nations that were represented at Niagara, and they had made 24 medals. And that medal, of course, is round, but the clasp on that medal actually was what they call a calumet, a long pipe. Usually our pipes today come from the tip of our finger to our elbow. You see our chiefs hold, or our pipe carriers hold their pipes like this. But this pipe that I'm talking about, the stem went from the tip of your finger to your heart. That's how long that stem was of that pipe. And then on that pipe, they would actually hang the tail feathers of a Mawa Ginu, Mawa Mawa Megaze. Depended which one they were using it for. They would put that war eagle, they call it golden eagle, Ginu, and that's what that was, a war pipe. Then there's Megaze, the white tail, that peace pipe. And then you see on that clasp, that metal, that large metal, that I believe I haven't proven this, that there's 24 of these medals that were given out at that time at Niagara to each representative of each nation that was there. And then the clasp is that calumet. It has an eagle wing and a pipe, and then that's where they put the ribbon through that clasp, and then they wear that pipe. But on that medal, on that medal, Anishinabe, meanwhile, Jaganash, they're sitting under a tree. The Jaganash and the Anishinabe are sitting under a tree. And then in behind them, you can see smoke in behind them. And then you see trees are cut in behind them. And then that's still the promises, that's referring to the promises. That medal is a mnemonic device that accompanies these belts. The mnemonic device isn't just the belt, and the treaty isn't just the belt. The medals and the belts and the top are the treaty. It isn't the paper. And that's, again, when we would talk about those medals, the chiefs would say, my heart is shining. When you put this on my heart, it shines. And it's the silver that they're talking about as well, but also of our intentions, our clear intentions. So that's what they said to us as well. Sir William Johnson came to Detroit first in 1761, and he says, the king has ordered me to take a brand from the fire of the fire that I lit in the Mohawks country. And the king has ordered me to come and light a council fire here at Detroit. And I say to you, the Benoji, and I say to you, your children will come here to this fire and warm themselves. They'll warm themselves by the fire, and the fire will throw off such a beautiful light that all nations will be attracted to it. That's what he said at that time. And he says, not only do I light this fire here, but I put beside this fire a poker. And if you think your fire is going to go out, stoke it, he says. He says, and here I piled logs of the choice pieces of wood, and I say to you, your fire will never go out. That's what he said to us at that time. And he says, he said, the Creator hears how I am talking to you. And that means that now I used to go to Assembly of First Nations, and I go to Chiefs of Ontario, then I'd hear Treaty 3 chiefs, as well as the chiefs out in the prairies, talk about how sacred their treaties. And I never used to hear our chiefs get up and say how sacred our treaties are. But then that's what's in the transcript of our Treaty of Niagara. The Creator hears how I am talking to you. And they also said, whenever you talk to me, you always point it up to the sun. And that means that everything that I'm saying is being heard by the Creator. That's what how the Anishinaabe understood that at that time. So that's what this belt means as well. And on that medal is pictured that. They said, Nanawin te Gaminishem says, in the middle of your island, that's where I put this fire. Put that fire there, and all the people are to gather around. And he said, Minwa dash gego kiwawin dan. And there's another thing that you had promised. Mandana Kwan Kaminin. It's the ship that I give you. And this ship will never be empty, he says. It'll always be full. If there's anything that you think is lacking there, I'll go look for whatever's lacking. Would be come on. And when I have found it, and then I'll put whatever's lacking, I'll put it in that boat. Then all of you gather together and grab that string that's tied to that rope and pull it to your country. That's what they told us. It'll always be full. That was what they promised us at that time. So again, they promised us warmth. That's what they called us, warmth. So that would be blankets, and they would cut cloth for our leggings, cut cloth for our shirts, cut cloth for ribbon skirts, and then they would cut the ribbon for our skirts, the skirts as well, and they would also have give us blankets. So they would call that warmth. And then also that council fire, they call that our warmth. But of course, the other thing that they gave us that led to some of our debilitation was they gave us that shkodea. They would give us that every year as part of this. They would give us that rum. And then, of course, we call it shkodea, and that's also warmth. They would give us that warmth as well that would burn through our bodies. So there's a lot more in that belt, these belts that were given at that time. So what ends up happening, I haven't been able to find the smoking gun, but once 1836 happens on Manitoulin Island, and the chiefs right from Thessalon all the way down to Shawanagat, they signed this treaty in 1836 that says that Manitoulin and all the islands that surround it will be a refuge for all the Anishinabe, and everyone can go there and live there. And then that's when they moved the council fire from Drummond Island and Penetanguishene. They moved that council fire to Manitowoc, and that was where the annual distribution of presents took place. And at Manitowoc, every July and August, late July and early August, 2,000 to 3,000 Native people met there. They came from Nipissing, and some came even as far as Green Bay to receive what they call the bounty of their Great Father and to renew this pledge. So that's the other thing with this belt that we call this. You hear people talk about a living treaty. So every year that they came and they gave us this belt and they recited that belt, that means it's a living treaty. It wasn't just a one-time event. And in fact, that's what they said, that Sir William Johnson said, I touched this belt. And I ask each and every one of you to come and touch this belt, that we may all be brethren, that we may all be united. And then that's the same thing later on, 1764, and then Tecumseh, before the War of 1812, he has a belt that's a similar one about the covenant chain. And then that's what he said after he was done talking. He says, now all of you come and touch this belt, that we all may be united, and that we say that we all agree to this. That's what they used to do. So when they would come and bring those presents, what we expected of them, and this is how the Anishinaabe used to do things, is they put that belt up, and then that one that came, he had to recite what he understood of that belt. And then the keeper of the belt, the host, then got up and recited the belt. So now instead of how we do things now is we meet, then we adopt the agenda, then we read the minutes from the last meeting, and then if there are any changes or anything, amendments, then we note them and then we adopt them. And then we say we're all on the same page. But that's the same thing with this belt. When they come, they gave us that belt, they come and they recite it, and then we get up and then we recite it, and then we say, now we both have another common understanding. We've both talked about the talk that is on this belt, the spirit of the words that are on that belt. And that's now how we would refer to that belt. That contains the spirit of our words, that belt. And so now when we say spirit, they say that the crown is the one that says the spirit and intent of the treaties. And that's what we're talking about with this. So I'll just show you. So this one first. Jajajbo Nishnabek Minoanarwek Migadok. Bene Migadok Nishnabek Minoanarwek. The Haudenosaunee people and the Nishnabek, they used to always fight. And the Narawik are who is called the Six Nations or Iroquois, and who they call themselves Haudenosaunee or Ongwe Hongwe. But they actually were beating us. they're laying a licking on us for a while. And they pushed us back. They pushed us from the Georgian Bay area, and then they pushed us to Michilimackinac, and then Shingwauk on the south shore of Lake Superior, and they even pushed us as far as Mississippi. But then Anishinabe, Kinoomaage, then those Anishinabe, we regrouped, and then we met them again. And then that's what we say, we beat them. We beat them at Nottoway. And then we pushed them right south to the Great Lakes. So that's why Nottoway are south of the Great Lakes now, except the Six Nations. But after we fought them, after many years, we fought them. We beat them over here at Point Iroquois on the south shore of Lake Superior. And we beat them at Nottoway-Ojing and Gamig. And we beat them at Willisville, at the Shidop-Kissimmee. And we beat them at Kunde-Benis, over there in Georgian Bay, an island that's called Skull Island. And we beat them at Nottawasaga, what they call Nottawasaga, Nottoway-Zaga, where the Nottoway can come out, or Nottoway-Zaga, the river mouth of the Nottoway. So we beat them at all these different places, and then we pushed them south to the Great Lakes. We pushed those Nottoway all the way down south. And then they came back to us and they asked us for peace. And this is how they asked us for peace. They presented this belt, but this is a reimagining of the belt. We don't know what it exactly looked like, but they said that the description on the belt actually said the belt has a line, a white line that bisects it in the middle. And that white line represents the road of peace. Anishinabe Mikan. The road of peace goes through all that there. And then they said the first symbol thereon represents that this council was held at Sault Ste. Marie, at Baltic, they said. And then they said the second symbol that's on there, they said our ancestors, the Gimishom Sabananik, all of our ancestors had placed at Manitoulin Island a white fish. Gisaan, Wabshkegiwoin. They put a white fish on Manitoulin Island. And they said that represented Bidehe, when clean-heartedness, purity of intentions. And then they said the next symbol thereon, they said our ancestors, Kichimishom Sabinanik, our ancestors had put a beaver, Bejikmik, Gisaan, Neamikon, and an island in Penetanguishing Bay. And that Mik represented wisdom. That's what they put there, to represent that all the actions of our ancestors was done in wisdom. And then they said over at the Narrows they placed there Wapshke Atik, a white caribou. And at that area, at the Narrows, they also entrusted that white caribou to keep this belt, as well as what they call Godot Nagan and our dish with one spoon. They were charged with keeping both of them. And then they said the last symbol that's on there, they said our ancestors, Gimishum Sabinanik, Gisaan Migiziwan. They put a bald-headed eagle on top of a pine tree at the mouth of the River Credit. That's what they said they did. And they said if ever there's any danger, illness, or enemies coming, that far-sightedness of that eagle will then fly up and tell that caribou at the Narrows, and then he'll continue and fly up to tell that beaver at Penetanguishing Bay, in the island at Penetanguishing Bay, of the impending danger. And then that eagle will fly up to Manitoulin and tell that fish, and then he'll fly up right up to Sault Ste. Marie here, and he'll tell the people here at Baltic that there's danger present. Well, what this belt actually represents and why we use this diamond is that the diamond represents a nation, and then a hexagon on a wampum belt usually represents a council fire, a place to deliberate and a place to meet, a specific place to meet, a specific. So this belt, although they never say what are the symbols represented thereon, it could be the diamonds or it could be the hexagons to represent the council fire. But there is a line, a path that goes right straight through, the good path, the good line, good road of peace through all these. And of course what this actually means what this belt actually means is the Nunavik are saying, you at Sault Ste. Marie of the Crane clan, Jijok, we know that you are the principal chiefs and the principal proprietors of the land around Baltic. And we know you at Manitoulin Island, Nidominis, that you of the Fish clan are the principal chiefs and the principal owners of that area. And we know you of the Beaver clan around Penetanguishene area, you are the principal clan, principal proprietors, and the principal chiefs of that area. And you of the Caribou clan at the Narrows, Minjikaning, you are the principal chief, and you're the principal owner, and you're the principal leaders of that area. And then the same thing, you of the Migize Doden at the River Credit, you are the principal owner of that land around North Shore of Lake Ontario. And that's what they say, the Mississaugas of New Credit. They say the Mississaugas of Alderville, Mississaugas of Curve Lake. And what the story goes is that all these people from this Mississauga First Nation that's just west of here, these are the ones that went down there to repopulate that area after all the Anishinaabe cleared that area out of the Nunavik and pushed them back. So that's what the diamond represents. The diamond represents a nation. And you'll see this here. Good on motion coming to help me instead of playing papers. So you see this belt here. I remember I talked about this hexagon representing a council fire. What the theory is, but I haven't actually proven this, is that for the Western Confederacy, the designated council fires are Detroit and Michilimackinac. That's where all the Anishinaabe are going to meet with the representatives of the Crown, and that's where they're going to meet to receive their presents every year. And this is called the Silver Covenant Chain Wampum Belt. And what they said before was that every year they're going to get together and polish the chain. Of course, we're talking about it metaphorically. So what the story goes is that this was first made, this treaty was actually first made between the Mohawk and the Dutch on the Hudson River. And the Mohawk and the Dutch, they said, we tie our hands together, bind ourselves together with rope and friendship. And they said, after a number of years, we found that rope isn't very strong. And they said, so we made an iron chain to bind ourselves because our friendship is stronger. They said a number of years went by, things were going good, but they said iron rusts and it's not very valuable. Anybody can make iron. So they said, we make this a silver covenant chain. And then we said every year, to prevent it from tarnishing, we're going to get together and polish it. So that's a metaphor for actually getting together and meeting in council and talking about things and polishing it up, making it smooth relations. So whenever they came to give us these presents at Michilimackinac, at Detroit, at Fort York, at Fort Niagara, and at Montreal, that's what they're saying. Maybe somebody got murdered, maybe a chief got murdered, maybe a chief got cheated, maybe something happened to one of our women. That's where we went and dealt with it, with the British officer. If it was their people that actually did it to our people. This was when we were settling these disputes. Of course, now we call it alternative dispute resolution. But here, this was when we would meet together and get these things put together and resolve any kind of conflicts that we have. But you see again, Beja Jaganash Nani We, meanwhile, Besha Nishnabe Nani We. Inani We, the Anishinaabe and the Jaganash stand together, holding hands, bound by the strong cords of friendship. That's what we would say. So this is the hexagon for Detroit, Michilimackinac, Niagara, and it could be Kingston, and then Montreal. But these two I'm not too sure of, but Detroit, Michilimackinac, I'm positive on. And of course it's 1764. But when he turned this, how I used to read this belt when I first started, you look at it and how we read things now, we read from left to right. And that's what they introduced to us. So you saw, and if you look at any old paintings of our chiefs with belts, you'll see them like this. They hold the belts up like this, and they read them like this. So what the Jaganash did, when they introduced writing to us, numbers, that's when we have to read this left to right instead of vertically. Now we read it horizontally. So when I started reading this horizontally, when I first started, then I look at this and you see this diamond is incomplete at the beginning. And I was like, okay, that means that it's recognizing that there was something before then. It's representing that there is something already in motion, and then it's picking up on it. And then you could actually see this path of peace, if you really would think of it as a path of peace going through here as well. And then you'd see this other diamond that isn't finished, but I didn't think it was a diamond at that time. I just thought it was odd that it's not done. So I look at it and I thought, okay, that just means that it's going to keep going on into the future because it's incomplete. That's how I read it. Something happened here and it latches onto it, goes right through, and it means it's going to continue on. So then when you hold it together, hold it inside out. So now remember I was saying the diamond represents the nation. Now you see two diamonds there. And then this completes the circle. And if you turn around, two diamonds, these two turn around. And then you see two nations represented as men. So that's what the British introduced, was two men. Before our wampum belts actually never had anthropomorphic figures on the belts. They were just hexagons, diamonds, lines, triangles. That's what we use, how to communicate. But then they introduced using men on the belts and numbers and letters. But we never used to do that. So that's what this, to me, this is a perfect blend of two literary traditions. Jaganash literary tradition with the numbers, and then the Anishinabe literary tradition with the use of those symbols. So you see Anishinabe, Jaganash, and you turn it around again. And then that's what that means again. Anishinabe, Jaganash, those two diamonds, and they complete each other. And it's again the same thing with that metal, the circle representing, of course, how important the circle is to all of us Anishinaabe people right across Turtle Island, how we think of that, eh? And then that metal is also a circle, and this forms a circle as well. So, okay, that's good. Then, but there's Bejagan Anishinaabe, where they get the Gansi Pinchaba, Anishinaabe, George Gabeo say, Yijin Kaza. Yijibi on with Bejik Zinigan, get them Zinigan, Yabe Teo de Canadian Museum of Civilization. So there's a fellow who was then by the name of George Gabeose, and he lived at Garden River. And he was actually part of this Hiawatha play. And he would be one of the actors that would do this Hiawatha play at Deborah and then also elsewhere. But when he would do that, actually he would use that to try and teach people about our Anishinaabe, what people commonly call Anishinaabe plight. Anyway, he wrote a manuscript because he was reading a lot of different histories of the Anishinaabe. And he says, I'm concerned because to me there's so many errors in our history that are being promoted by different people who pretend to know our history and our customs. So I'm going to write it down how I heard it from the sages that I grew up with. So he wrote a manuscript that's at the Canadian Museum of Civilization on the history of the Anishinaabe of Bao'Ping. and then elsewhere. And then that was the one thing he mentioned in there, was he says, Sir William Johnson sent his emissaries up here with wampum and a medal. And he says, then the emissary was told with that medal to say, you see that this medal is round. It has no beginning and no end. And it is representative of eternity and infinity. And he says, and that's how long these promises will be kept. This medal represents the promises that we make to you as well. So now, none of our chiefs have these medals anymore. Those medals weren't private property. Those medals were the property of the office of the chief. And then each successive chief that kept that, these are certain medals, not medals that were fought during the War of 1812. But these were certain medals of the chief, office of chief. And when that chief died, he gave that medal to the next chief. But then what ended up happening is people ended up starting to think that that was their own private property, not the office of the chief of that particular band. And so what we were hoping was going to happen, but it didn't happen, was that when we went to commemorate this 250th anniversary of the Treaty of Niagara, we were hoping that we would have all 24 of those medals and all the representatives, the hereditary chiefs, wearing those medals and then holding that belt to say, we're now gathered here together, the Western Confederacy, the Eastern Confederacy, and we're taking this strong cord of friendship and we're pulling that G-Mon and we're trying to pull you back to this council fire to come and live up to all those promises that you had made to our ancestors, that this is how things are going to be from here on in, and you're going to respect our wampum, you're going to respect our pipe, you're going to respect that tobacco, our eagle staffs, our feathers, and you're going to respect our language as well. So that's what we were hoping. And then of course, all those medals have been auctioned off. Some are in private collections, some are in museums, and then also some have just disappeared, and maybe the odd one is kept in a family still. So if we're able to put the original belt and all these medals and all these people, get everyone all together, then to hopefully understand this a bit more. And that's the thing, before, what people always say, understanding should precede action. You don't usually jump into a situation without understanding the situation beforehand. So what we want to do is we want to understand this as much as we can to bring them to the table and then to actually try and affect and re-establish that covenant chain friendship. So there's one more belt, but I think he's all seen it and he's probably taken enough of your time. So I'll just show you this belt, but I already talked about the promises anyway on this belt. So here, this is the 24 nations that gathered. Oh, yeah, Glenn, come here. So that's the one they said, Manda not Pankaminen, I give you this ship. It'll never be empty. That's what they had said at that time. It'll always be full of everything that you need, the necessaries of life, whether it is for you to go out on the hunt or whether it is to keep yourself warm throughout the winter. That's what this boat, they said, will always be full. And then all 24 nations, 12 of them are the Eastern Confederacy, 6 nations, the Abenaki, Mi'kmaq, and all them. And then the other are the Anishinabe, the Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi, Fox, Sauk, Winnebago, Ho-Chunk, Cree, Sioux, and Ojibwe and Odawa. So when this meeting was held in 1764 at Niagara, then that's when Sir William Johnson had said at that time with the first belt, I take one end of this belt and I fix it at the falls of Sault Ste. Marie at Bog Ting. And then one end I keep at my house, and it'll form a road between our countries. And then Bejiko, Ojibwe, Ogima, Inani, Inaquatam, Ginquatan de Jaganashan. So this Anishinaabe chief stood up at that time, this Ojibwe chief, and he says, no, this belt should not belong at Sault Ste. Marie. It should not be kept at Baltic. It should be kept at Michilimackinac, a place of more consequence to our people, and a place where it will be seen by more of our people, and should be kept with our elder brother, the Odawa. And that's how the Odawa ended up being the keepers of this belt on behalf of the Western Confederacy. And that's why the Odawa chief, who's the keeper of this, would be the one who we would refer to as our white bird, that would deliver these messages on behalf of all the different the other 12 nations that are part of this process. So some say that ship, this rock, is the rock at Quebec. Others say it's all in North America. Chique Menis. So, and then one guy, I think he's taking it too far, he says it's Cahokia. I don't think it's Cahokia. There's 12 and 12. And you see all their white hearts, and they're all holding that cord of friendship, and they hold that rope to that ship. So, I guess me, Minikwa, the Bajmaya, that's about all I should talk about at this point. He was in the neck.